Hey, what's up? I'm Kyrie, and this is Blunts and Bourbon, the gentleman's vibe, where we have fun in our city, reviewing fine cigars and drinking exceptional bourbon. And we share it right here with you. So I'd like for you to hit that subscribe button. I thank you for tuning in. It's time to buckle up and let's enjoy the ride.
We puffin' Cohiba, sippin' on fine bourbon. I don't play for the leader. I'm a grinder, get to working while you moving like a tortoise. I'm more like fast forward. You think it is funny? I get straight to the money while I'm puffin' a Cohiba, sippin' on fine bourbon. Holla at some mamacitas, girl, that outfit fitting perfect, and I got what you deserving. I see it in your eyes. You need some relief, so let's ride.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kyrie, and we out here at Union Horse Distillery. About to go check out some bourbon for all my bourbon aficionados. So once again, man, I'm glad y'all here. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Tune in, tap in, and get that notification so every time we're doing something like this at Union Horse, you'll be notified. Come with me. What's going on, man? My name is Kyrie.
I'm Joe Heater.
Nice to meet you, man.
What's up, guys? What can I get for you, brother?
First, I'm gonna just give you my card real quick. Doing a podcast, we're doing a show called Blunts and Bourbon. And of course, that's why we're here, to check out the bourbon from Union Horse, man, right here in my backyard. You know, I stay in Piper, so I was like, man, let me go down here and check this out.
That's what I'm talking about.
You know, make sure.
That's what I'm talking about. Well, let me make you some bourbon then.
Let me get, I like mine neat.
Hell yeah, me too. You want to say, I'm guessing you want the bourbon.
Yes.
Let's do the bourbon.
Make two of them for it.
I got you, brother.
Oh yeah, shouts out to my guy Capo back there.
There you go, my man.
Right on, right on.
Top copy.
Too bad we're not on the Missouri side.
Hey, then we can have
The truth.
exactly. But with that one, man, yeah, you scan that card, it'll take you to my YouTube channel where you can watch my show. We review fine cigars and exceptional bourbon, and we just share it with everybody. So,
I'll definitely check it out.
oh yeah,
Yep.
definitely. Appreciate y'all letting me come in here and record, man. That's freaking
That
awesome.
one not working.
Awesome.
I appreciate the grind, man. Cheers
Oh
to
yeah.
y'all.
Cheers. Hey.
I probably shouldn't have done that on camera, should I?
I do. Drink up. Well, like I said, we out here at Union Horse Distilling Co. This is my first time ever coming to a distillery, so I'm so excited to just walk through this place and see how they go through their whole process of creating some of these fine bourbons and other spirits that they have in here. Like they got a whole lot of collection, a lot of history here. You see up on the top shelf what they got up there.
Yeah.
So how many different type of bourbons? I see.
So, all right, so these are the different types. So we've got a barrel strength rye. That one's sitting at about 112 proof. And then here's the regular rye. So this one's just a higher proof.
Yeah.
It doesn't get proofed down as much. So those are our ryes. And then we have a bourbon. So that's the bourbon whiskey right there.
That's what I'm drinking.
Right. This is like a 3-grain malt whiskey. This is our newest whiskey. It's really good. And then we have a white whiskey.
A white whiskey?
That's dope.
I definitely got to try that.
Yeah.
I definitely got to
So
try
white
that.
whiskey's weird. So they all have to go through a barrel. So that one's only in a barrel for about 2 hours. And so it doesn't pick up the color from the char of the barrel.
Really? But it still has the flavor? Oh man, you see that? The white whiskey. We about to be trying some new stuff up in here, Blunts and Bourbon, the one and only. Let's take another walk through here and see what else, some of this history up in here, man. Hit the lights. Got a 94 pointer, a 92, a 93 for they straight rye. So I will be trying all those, believe me. Believe me, every bottle you see up here, he said he's gonna put them all up there for us to test. So I can't wait. And I'm gonna share it all with you. What else we got back here? Oh, looks like another bar room back here. Some more artwork. Oh, that's where all the barrels are at and stuff. This is cool. We in here, bro. We in here. That's how we doing it for the blunts and bourbon.
So a little refresher, all alcohol is made from grains, for the most part, or at least all whiskey is made from grains. So we use 4 grains. Predominantly we'll use wheat, corn, rye, and barley. And most people are familiar with what wheat and corn looks like, but rye and barley are kind of unique. Rye almost looks like a little bit like sunflower seeds, and then barley looks like the busted version of sunflower seeds. So barley itself, once it's malted, it actually gets to the point where it's right at germinating. So it's kind of like about to become a plant, and then they stop it. So that's why it kind of has a little bit of an open look to it. Like I was saying, everything that we try to source is local or farm or family oriented. So all of our wheat actually comes from Kansas. All of our corn comes from Missouri. We use a sweet red winter wheat. And then all of the corn that we use is A1 food grade corn. So kind of the highest of the high as far as corn goes. The rye we cannot source from Missouri, Kansas, just because it doesn't consistently grow here. You can technically grow rye, but it's like if you were trying to grow a lemon tree here in Kansas. It's like you get lemons, but they're just not good, you know? So we source all of our rye from the Dakotas. Our last batch came in from South Dakota. Most rye production is actually in Canada, just because of the cold weather. And then our barley actually comes from Michigan. So we keep it in the States for all 4 of our grains. So like you can see from the bags here and these bags, we get all of our grains in 1-ton bags. So think of like, you know, you were in an apartment when you were younger and you're going grocery shopping and you try to stuff as many things in one bag as once, and then, you know, you have 7 bags lined up going inside after a nice, you know, grocery run, and that's essentially what all of these are. And then we'll take these, cut them open, and then throw them in these black bins here. As far as our recipe goes, we use just a little bit over 1,000 pounds of grain in every mash bill that we do. So it makes our math really easy because it's all kind of a multiple of 10. For our bourbon, we actually use 80% corn and 20% rye in that mash bill, so the math is super easy with 800 and 200 pounds of the respective grains. So what we'll do is we'll transfer all of the ton of grain into one of these 4 bins, and then using the forklift, and actually you can see it a little bit from here at the very end of that lighted room. We have another bin where we'll take all those grains, weigh it out using our industrial scale, and then get it ready for milling. So yeah, everything's done locally, everything's measured. You know, this is a science and an art at the same time. You know, what we're doing is essentially like a chemistry class on steroids. You know, it's like you can do this in the backwoods and make moonshine, or you can do it very specifically, and we kind of ride that line right in the middle as far as precision and then kind of a little bit of freeform art. So yeah, we have all the grains come in here, and then they don't leave our facility until it's in liquid bottle form. So one thing our company and then the 4 siblings really pride themselves on is that we've never sourced alcohol since we opened up. So everything that we've put out into the market, we have made under this roof, which is something that's very hard to do for startup craft distilleries. Most will defer to like a MGP or a mass production distillery like up in Weston. Just to put something in the market to start making money right away.
You're the only local distillery that can say that.
Yes, the only one. There's plenty of others that have, you know, came after us, but as far as the Kansas City market goes, we're actually the only current distillery that makes a labeled straight bourbon in-house. So we're very proud of that. We actually had an author come in who's writing a book, and he's visiting 270 distilleries that make labeled straight bourbons, and we're the only one from Kansas City visited. The only one from Kansas City, actually. So it was a fun time. Kyle and I got to show them around. One last thing while we're over here before we move to the milling area, I want to mention is these last two barrels on this row are actually the first two that we laid down. So we have barrel number 1 here, barrel number 2 of bourbon. You can see on the barrel itself, it still says Dark Horse Distillery. So these barrels are 10 years old. So you can tell the difference between the brand new ones here, wrapped and blasted, and then these poor guys have seen some shit. But you have to imagine the patience that it takes. You know, it's like when you cook something at home, like there's patience into cooking a meal, a dinner, a lunch, but you get the immediate, satisfaction of being able to eat it afterwards. Patrick and Travis had to go through that process day in and day out, and then, their first barrel's still sitting here. They tried it a couple times to make sure, it's aging properly, but, as far as...
What are the barrels made out of?
The barrels are all white Missouri oak. So we'll talk a little bit, after the production side of it, we'll talk a little bit how we barrel things and like the kind of consistencies of our barrels, but it's all going to be made from white Missouri oak. Yes, another question.
What is the leafing on the barrel?
Yeah, so because they're made of just wood and metal, there is going to be a bit of leakage from it. So they're not sealed on the inside. It's not like there's a coating that kind of keeps everything in. So like these black marks that you see is actually the distillate leaking out. And then after it leaks out, it dries up and kind of becomes a resin or like kind of a tar-like substance that seals in the barrel a little bit more. So, as they age, like this one still looks pretty fresh. Doesn't have too much markings, but as they age, usually a little bit seeps out and then it catches itself and kind of seals. So the only time we really move the barrels along at all is if there's a leak and we just rotate them so, the hole's at the top or it has a chance to seal.
Is that term angel's share kind of
Yes.
stuff? Okay.
Yeah,
But I don't smell it.
See, that's the thing. That's a good thing that you don't smell it.
Yeah, if you
Because if
smell
we
it.
smell
Staying in the
it,
barrel.
then we would have a leak.
Right.
And then we would have to dig around and try to find it. And that's not fun.
When you have corn like from garden to garden or year to year based on weather and stuff, it tastes different. Do you ever notice like you have to change a little bit?
So when it comes to the corn, there's usually enough consistency with it just because it's made in such like mass quantities. Like you think of like a non-vintage wine, it's made so consistently that there's not too much of a variance. Excuse me. But if you get down to the exact science of it, there's actually, just a bit of variance. But in the grand scheme of things, like we're talking minute differences that maybe could be tasted from barrel to barrel over year over year.
And if it's that something you're able to taste the difference between that, then you're super advanced with your palate.
Yeah. Yeah, you could take my job.
Yeah.
Most elevators, you're talking million pounds of grain in one silo,
Yeah.
I didn't know
is
if
some
it's
of
brown
it's
made
years
corn
old. So.
less
Yeah.
sweet or...
There are still differences. I mean, there's a guy locally who's super into it. He actually has been researching the bees' migration pattern over cornfields to see any adjustment.
And how they pollinate and finish their life cycle. So
Like people get super in depth into all that stuff, but for us as a whole, by the time it gets to us, it's usually combined enough that we're not seeing big drastic changes from yield to yield.
At the same time, if we were making like 5 gallons of whiskey a year, like year over year, there'd be a pretty distinct difference. But since we're making, hundreds of 53-gallon barrels, by the time it's all said and done, we do our small batch blends, it kind of creates a consistency year over year. But it's a good question.
Explain to me why you still have bourbon in the first barrel and what you're using that for.
Yeah, so as far as whiskey, right, so to be called a bourbon, it has to be a minimum of 2 years old. Well, that's fine. Jumping ahead a little bit, but as far as bourbon goes, it has to be aged a minimum of 2 years. But after that, there's really no distinction. So, you'll see some whiskeys in the market that are, 5, 10, 15, 20, 24 years old. So that's why we would keep something around. Yeah. So yeast when it makes alcohol, it actually makes 3 different things. It'll consume the sugar, and the 3 byproducts are going to be CO2, or carbon dioxide. So we actually have a specialized vent system in the entirety of the distillery, because this is open air, where it will suck all that CO2 out and make sure it's filtered out, just so we have clean air to breathe. So that was one of the things when we were first opening up. We had to work with lawmakers because they wanted us to close this off at first, but we wanted to keep it open air, so when you walked into the distillery, and if we were active, you could smell the aroma of the brewing process, or the distilling process. So essentially, like I said, this is creating 3 things. CO2, the first one. The second one is heat. So that's the chemical reaction of the yeast consuming the sugar. It makes a lot of heat. So on this side of it all, you'll see a black wall. Those are actually water jackets. So as the fermentation tanks heat up, we want them to heat up because that means it's working, but we don't want them to get too hot, because we want them to party as long as they can. So we have specific instruments that will gauge the temperature of these fermentation tanks and then cool them as needed to keep them at about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. So some of these tanks will be hotter than others, and nothing's heating them except for their own chemical reaction, which is really cool. So, we'll walk in here on Wednesday, feel one of these, and it'll be warm. And the only thing happening is yeast, throwing that party, like I said. The last thing that it makes of the 3 byproducts, CO2, heat, and then alcohol. That's the fun part. So essentially, if we were brewing, right, we would stop at this point. These fermentation tanks would be closed in, so the CO2 kind of incorporates into the liquid itself, and then you would filter it, bottle it, and that's beer. But after 5 to 7 days, take your time. So after those 5 to 7 days, the mash in here, after it's fermented, will be about 18 to 20% alcohol. So that's the kind of beer I like to drink. But it probably wouldn't taste good because it's all open air, and it's not meant to be beer, and this and that. But so it's about 18 to 20% alcohol at the end of those 5 to 7 days. As you can see, I think one of those was bubbling. So there'll be instances where those bubbles will be like 3 times as big, or instances where there's no bubbles at all. But something that Patrick and Travis had to learn very quickly is that certain mash bills tend to bubble over sometimes. So you can only imagine when you're cooking pasta at home, or boiling something, you let it overflow a little bit. That's a very easy mess to clean up when it's on your stovetop and it's just water. But imagine this, almost gelatinous oatmeal boiling over. Chunks of grain. Like, these 4 drains have also seen some things in their life, because when they first started, they would come in and they're still trying to figure out how the chemistry worked on this side of it, and the timing is kind of a big thing too. There would be times where they would come in and there would be our bourbon all over this ground. And then, a few hours of pressure washing and squeegeeing later, it'd finally be clean. So thankfully they have it down now where they know which ones will, kind of overflow a little bit, so they'll split it into 2 different tanks instead of just doing all one.
Which is why you saw the 2 kind of in the middle, the dark ones. Those are our malt whiskey, and that's exactly why they're separated, because every time in the first few batches they would come in, it would just be overflow the next day. So that was one, after the first 3 times they did it, they're like, nope, we gotta half this, we gotta cut this down. And then they thought they had it under control a couple weeks ago, and we made a batch, and they're like, okay, we can do it, we have it dialed in now. Nope. Came in the next day, overflowed, so yeah. Our malt whiskey will always have to be halved. It's just super active when it gets into fermentation, it's crazy.
Bigger tank. You see the bigger tank.
Which is great. So at the end of the fermentation cycle, or the dough rising or proofing cycle, that's when it's ready for the copper still. So that same pump that has worked so hard in its lifetime to move everything over to here, will move everything back in the still, liquid and grain all. Essentially what's happening in this still is it's bringing up to just under the water boiling temperature. So when it does that, because it is almost 20% alcohol, the alcohol starts to evaporate before the water vapor itself. So that's kind of the most intricate part of distilling, is because we're bringing this up to as close of a boil as can. I hope no one left their windows down because it is raining. But so it's bringing it up to just below water boiling temperature, to the point where all this alcohol is starting to evaporate. And as the alcohol is evaporating, it's going up that first cylinder column, so the one attached to the big, like, bulbous part of the still, and it's running through some water trays, or like percolators is the best way to say it. So it's essentially being filtered through its own distillate to kind of catch everything that it can, catch any impurities, and then also kind of start that water vapor or alcohol vapor getting to the point where it can condense down. So it'll go up through that first cylinder, and as it does that, like I said, it filters through all of those trays or percolators, and then the skinnier cylinder to the left or right of it, depending on where you are, is where it'll slowly start trickling down. So you can see it, like the condensing on the outside of it. It's because the cold water is always flowing through there. So that second cylinder is very cold. So that's why it might drop down and land on that towel, while I'm talking. But that second cylinder is very cold because it is taking almost, boiling temperature alcohol vapor to, at the end of it, about a 50-degree alcohol distillate. So what's happening as it slowly tracks down that coil, it will go into this seeing eyeglass. So it'll run through that silver tube into this section. So this section is kind of where the money happens. This is where we catch our bourbon, our rye, our white whiskey, our vodka single malt. All of that will happen. It'll come up through this middle cylinder, overflow down into where it's caught. So what you can see here is a little hydrometer, a little thermometer looking thing that does two things. So as the distillate's coming up, it has a specific density because of its alcohol percentage, right? So the distillate, as it comes out, the distillate that we want out of this usually sits at about 152 to 155 proof. So you're thinking at almost 75% alcohol as it comes out. So this thing is buoyant, so it's going to bounce up and it'll hit right about that 150 mark. And that's when we know that it's at the distillate that we want. And then down below is just a temperature gauge, so a temperature thermometer that we'll see that distillate's coming out in that 55 to 60 degree range. So what'll happen here is there's actually 3 stages to distillate. There's the heads, the hearts, and the tails. And as Kyle just opened this up, you'll see the 3 different containers. So the heads, the first part of the distillate, is actually going to have a lot of impurities. So you think of the stories of old moonshiners or Prohibition style, like during Prohibition alcohol making people go blind, or the nitroglycerin kind of, the heads part of the distillate actually has a lot of impurities that are harmful to the body if consumed. So it has like some methanol and other impurities that we want to make sure that we take out for you guys. Be careful sticking your head in here because there is a little distillate in there, so it'll smell. Which, that distillate's sweet and delicious, but it's also very boozy at the same time.
So that's bourbon before it's been barrel aged at about 152 proof.
Yeah. So we'll take the heads out of it. So the heads and the tails start at the very start and the very end of this distillation process. The stillage turning into alcohol itself will be in that copper still for about a day's work. So about 6 to 8 hours is how long they do this process. So about the first to an hour and a half of time, it'll be heads only as it's kind of coming out. So we'll filter all of that out, and then once Patrick and Travis know for a fact that we're in the hearts of it all, the purest part of the distillate, the part that we only part that we put in our barrels, once we're 100% in the hearts, they'll switch it over by hand, and that's these knobs up top here. They'll switch it over, and they know that once they're in the sweet spot that we'll get about 80% of the distillate total in the hearts. So about 10% of that goes to the heads, 80% goes to the hearts, and about 10% goes to the tails. The tails being the latter end of it all. So a lot of Scotch or tequila or mezcal distillers will use a little bit more of the tails because it has not so much the unsafe part, but just kind of a funky note to it. So if you're familiar with Scotch and Mezcal, it has kind of like a more funky vibe to it, and that's because they will incorporate more tails into what they barrel. But we, like I said, only use the hearts for our bourbon, rye, white whiskey, vodka. We make sure we're using only the purest part of the distillate. So at the end of all of this, right, we've started with 500 gallons of liquid, a little over 1,000 pounds of grain. How much volume do you think we get out of the hearts? Any guesses? It's a number in gallons. 100 gallons? Good guess. 50? So it ends up being about 42 gallons after all of that. So a little less than 5% yield from the starting liquid and grains. So like I said, this is all a game of loss. You know, we're starting with so much product, ending with so little, and it's about 43 gallons total.
Also, another reason why there's breweries opening up, but not distilleries in Kansas City at that point in time.
Yeah, the only piece of equipment that makes us different than a brewery is the still. Like I was saying, you know, it's like the brewers stop there. It's enclosed a little different, probably a little bigger, you know, just volume of, you know, beer as opposed to liquor. But yeah, so after all of that, just a little over 40 gallons.
So what do you do with the tails?
So the heads and tails will actually run back through the still. Because there is a little, because we make sure we're 100% in the hearts, there is still a little bit of hearts in that kind of transition period that we can re-still out of it, and that's what we'll use for like R&D kind of projects. So if we want to, you know, dabble in a different style of aging or a different blend of distillate, we'll use that. But as far as the heads and tails that isn't safe for human consumption, we'll use for cleaning.
Bourbon. We out here.
Once we get into the aged liquor, that's when we start tasting.
Going through a little sample. Little something.
That little white whiskey, you know what I'm saying?
Little white whiskey.
Smell like tequila, but it's smooth as fuck. That's
very smooth, bro. It does smell like tequila, but it tastes like bourbon, like whiskey.
But not the bite.
Not as much caramel.
Yeah, it's that bite.
That oak, that oak. It's missing that oak. That's the long shot. UHD.
We got the straight, reserve straight, reunion straight.
Which one we on next?
We're going to go down to is down to the left.
The reserve
It's our
straight.
reserve straight bourbon.
Reserve straight bourbon.
Smoking on Cohiba, sipping on fine bourbon.
Hey.
Straight bourbon, aged a minimum of 5 years. One thing that we really like to
5-year-old bourbon.
Small batch.
I remember I was doing this in a live video.
Sure, you talk about it, bottling room. But you know, this is a small batch bourbon. So on the forefront of the
You can't move it that way. You gotta move it like this. You can move it like this to twist it.
As opposed to some others. You know, typical rye mash bills with bourbons get that 5.
Oh man, thanks, bro.
Hell of a way.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man.
Calibre, get a little bit of spiciness, a little bit of like that marbled rye, peppercorn spiciness, but then it's really gonna mellow out like a bourbon you're used to.
The spice.
Notes of orange peel, vanilla bean, a little caramel on that
Orange
back.
peel.
I got the caramel.
Caramel.
Yeah.
With a little bit of, you know, distilled water or ice. Like in the summertime, I typically drink whiskey on rocks. And then
I remember I was doing this in your live video.
Yeah. Just give it a swirl.
Giving it a little swirl.
So I think this one, which is a single IC, really opens up.
Right on.
It smells. I smell the caramel.
Yeah, you can smell it. You can smell it.
Really makes it unique. Really gonna get a little bit of that spiciness on the forefront palate.
The reserve straight bourbon, corn and rye, 92 proof.
92, 80 to 92. We going
So
up.
the next one, and if you guys have any questions, feel free to just Holler out and stop me. Going. The next one's gonna be the top middle. This is our rolling standard.
Rolling standard.
The rolling standard.
4 grain, barley, wheat, corn, and rye.
Barley, wheat, corn, and rye. The 4 grain.
4 banger.
Ooh, smell that,
We
bro.
had a 5-year rye, 5-year bourbon already out in the market. It was selling, it was doing well. We had to figure out what we were going to do next.
That's sweet.
So
That's very sweet.
set out 50 different barrels, the smaller 10 to 25 gallon barrels.
I think I might want a bottle of this.
50 different mash bills.
I like the smell of this.
And 50 different fruits.
So out of the ones we didn't
At the
have,
end of that, they had 3
I mean, since we ain't been through all of
This
them.
taste is, whoa, that taste is straight different.
bills left. They ended up blending 2 of them. So the process was, at the end of the long work day, Patrick and Travis would sit down.
That's smooth.
next to each
That's
other,
smooth right
That's
there.
hella
a
smooth.
little siphon.
The
and
This is
rolling
smooth.
standard, 4 grain. I like that. The aroma.
It's the hardest
It's
day's
different.
work.
Mm-hmm.
Hardest day's work.
Not
So they
sweet,
blended these,
not stiff.
two of the last 3
It's like it's the right blend
It's
with
the
all
right blend with a little spice, all the flavors. That's that 4
different
grains.
grains.
Yeah, 4 different
yeah.
grains. That's nice. That's nice. I think this might be the one I'm gonna get, bro.
The single malt's going to be that malted barley, and then the wheated bourbon, you're going to have corn, wheat, and rye. So at the end of it all, it's blended together, and you got to think of like a Tullamore Dew meets a Welsh vegetable reserve, or a larceny, or another wheated bourbon. You're going to get a little bit of that kind of Irish.
A weeded bourbon. That's what it is. That weeded bourbon.
But as it hits the back of the palate, you're going to get that weeded bourbon sweeter finish.
It goes, that's why it goes down.
That sweet. You just said it was sweet.
It
Yeah,
just go down.
the smooth boy.
Flavor profiles kind of attack each other.
You heard it.
So each time you
I'm tapping in right here. But this is 5 shots basically, bro. 5 shots in less than a minute. A little more than a minute, but 5 shots.
Right.
Next to rye, and then the corn as well. So this one's a super fun one to play around with
100% rye.
because It is unique. As far
The
as
reunion straight.
go, most typically are all made
The reunion straight, 100% rye, 93 proof.
And you got the BS reunion.
So that's what makes
112.
That's the burl shrimp. That's the last one.
The BS reunion rye, 112.3 proof.
Yeah, that's the
I
burl
bet you.
shrimp. That's the
you.
burl shrimp.
This is gonna be the last one.
Yeah,
bro.
yeah, you got to. You got to finish it off with that last one. Oh, you gotta hydrate. Gotta hydrate the palate.
Right, it's just
tried them on 8 different versions of Rolling Standard. Some with higher malt percentage, higher wheat percentages, lower alcohol content, higher alcohol content. So
Let H2O hydrate the palate while we sitting up in here going through all these bourbons.
Union Horse got the real deal.
Real deal, real deal.
If you ain't heard, you done got the word straight from Buns and Bourbon.
Yeah, tell them Bunsen Bourbon sent you, Kyrie and Capo.
You know it.
You know it.
So it made it past the experimental side, and so now it's fully part of our lab.
So the next one we're gonna do is that straight rye.
Straight.
Just with a first
See,
sip, you're like,
this like seemed like something that'd be good in the morning with your steak and eggs. You know what I'm saying? Get you some heavy grease. Get you some good breakfast. You know what I'm
You
saying?
hear what he said with the first sip? If you come back 10, 15 minutes, that's a rolling standard. He said the rolling standard, you hit it, then 15 minutes later you come back and this is gonna be more mellow.
back to the bottom on the right.
I believe it.
So this is going to be your union. This is our 100% straight rye.
Now this the one, 100% straight rye.
I like that smell.
I know.
That smells amazing.
The
last one's my favorite.
I believe it.
Exactly. We were just looking at that.
I believe it.
I like the rolling standard though, man.
It's like the perfect time to place whiskey.
Yeah.
And really, the Bourbon standard with a little bit of citrus is delicious. So like a little bit of lemonade or a whiskey sour.
Or whiskey. Oh, okay.
I dig
Okay.
the lemonade.
Okay.
I dig the lemonade.
I can see them flavors mashing
I
together.
can see the
Yeah.
lemonade. Lemonade's good with a lot of different liquors and alcohols and stuff like that. So.
It really comes out, and it's like it almost tastes like if you mix it with lemonade, it tastes like you made the lemonade with like brown sugar instead of like white cane sugar. And it has like that
Yeah. More tropical flavor or something.
Right, yeah, I'm saying.
like a tiki drink.
Tiki.
Yeah, which is, oh, your umbrella in there.
So around that time, 5-6 years ago,
The rye, you can definitely taste that rye. Yeah.
I can smell it. Yeah,
Boy,
it's a
this
different.
is good. Man, all of these.
The white, the clear, I like that one. That one, it's really not one that I haven't said. They're all good. They're all good.
Yeah, very different.
Very different. Very unique.
By smell,
taste
taste,
different,
you know
yes.
what I'm saying? There's nothing, they all have their own individuals, smell, taste, all of that stuff.
I really like the rye because it has like a salinity to it. Like on that back end, it almost tastes like a salted caramel.
Yeah, something, yeah.
But like on the forefront, like you get that black peppercorn.
Yeah, it's like that.
Spice on the front.
Yeah, smooth,
Smooth out, the sweet in the back, yep. That's the Reunion straight rye. Rinse my palate again before we get to this last one. Man, I'm gonna need some food after this. I don't know where we gonna go eat at, bro.
No doubt.
We're gonna figure out somewhere to eat, though.
That was good.
Look at the color of it, bro.
It's glossy, caramel.
Look at the color of that.
Look at that. Look at that.
Amber.
Look at that.
You see that? See the color of that? Look at that. Beautiful.
You can't get that nowhere else but Union Horse, you hear me?
Right here, Kansas City. Y'all need to come out here and do a tour at the distillery. You'll love it. Hey, barbecue and bourbon.
Yeah. I told you we should have an event. We should have an event.
Hey.
If we have an event here, hey, you can't say we didn't ever told you.
Might look out for that event here.
That's caramel sweet. I smell it.
Yeah. It's the same thing as this, it's just barrel proof. It's not cut. It's gonna be a lot more spicier.
Hold on, which one?
This one with the BS Reunion.
This is what we got.
Yeah, we on the BS Reunion. It's the same as the rye, but it's just barrel proof. Yes, sir. Woo!
120, where that at? Right.
Couple weeks.
Yeah. Come back.
Right.
I have to come back.
Look, I'm gonna have to.
Oh man.
What you think?
This barrel. Oh, yes, sir. The barrel strength Reunion rye. 112 proof.
Oh, this so smooth.
112.3 proof. So smooth.
For it to be such a high proof.
Man, this is delicious. Cheers, bro.
Man, look.
Union Horse, y'all did y'all thing, man.
So as far as like y'all barrels, y'all get them shipped in here pre-made, or that's something y'all do in-house?
All pre-made.
So y'all do them all in-house? Because I've seen like
They all pre-made from Missouri, yeah.
As far as like the production of them, the forming of the barrel. Like, I've seen the process. I just wanted to know.
Yeah.
Do y'all have somebody shipping them in, or y'all just do them all inside?
So it's all independent stave company, which he talked about just a little bit, but not too long. But so it's a family-owned and operated company out of Lebanon, Missouri. They make all of it. So they're technically called a cooperage, right? So if you have a friend or something that's got first or last name Cooper, like you know how each name kind of has an origin? Cooper is that of someone that made barrels. So, I mean, you think about Europe, right? They've been making wine and liquor.
Yeah, forever.
Grapes.
As long as we can even think about it. So that Cooper name, at least in the English language, is all relating to making barrels.
Making barrels. That's what's up.
So yeah, we get all of ours from the Ozarks, is where we get the white oak.
Okay.
And then they make it in Lebanon, Missouri.
Nice.
So they'll ship them in. We'll get them on those pallets, and they're wrapped in plastic, ready to go.
Like the ones we saw back there. Yeah. That's nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
man.
that's one of those things that, you know, if we could make them ourselves, we would, but that's a hard process.
That's a hard process.
They have it down to
that's
the
why.
science.
You don't want to reinvent the wheel, you know.
We're just reinventing whiskey.
Hey, you guys are doing a good job.
Revitalizing.
Revitalizing.
Reinventing, revitalizing.
Right.
So, where can I? How much? Man, I want to buy a couple, a bottle or something. What I gotta do?
So,
I gotta go to the store.
we sell all of them here. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we sell all of them here, but all of the local liquor stores. So like you think of your like Lucas's, Gomer's, MDL.
The Legends liquor store. You at the Legends liquor store?
What was that?
The Legends liquor store?
Yeah, the Village Discount.
Village West, yeah.
Yeah, they have all of our product as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just up there a couple weeks ago pouring free samples out for people.
That's my liquor store.
Oh, nice.
I missed it, man. I missed all the free samples. I could have been out there getting some free samples.
Right, we probably wouldn't even be here today.
I'll still be here today. I wanted to be here today for this, you know, and to get this whole interaction, man.
This is dope,
So they have all of our dark liquors at Village West, but if you're looking for like the white whiskey or the vodka, you have to go to like a bigger one. So like the Lucas's, MDLs, like the bigger liquor stores tend to have our vodka and white whiskey. But Village West still has all of the dark ones though.
Cool.
Yeah.
I want to get one from here though.
Favorite.
I'm leaving with one
This
today.
is probably my favorite.
Which one is that?
The one we sipping on.
The Burrow Strength?
Yeah,
bro, for real.
that's
It's these two. It's these two, the Burrow Strength and the four.
The four. Okay. If I was to do 1 to 5, this would be 1. The 4 grain would be 2. The clear whiskey, that would have been my 3. Cause that was great for a clear whiskey. And then it can be 4 or 5, either or between the
them two, the reserve,
yeah.
and
I mean,
the straight rye.
them can be my other either or for 4 and 5.
Number 2, reserve straight bourbon, bottom left. Number 3, rolling standard, top middle.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Number 4, bottom right, Union straight rye. Last one, top right, barrel strength straight rye.
Yeah.
Burrow Strength.
Yeah.
So where is that bottle at? I need one of those to take with me.
Right.
I'm gonna get a Burrow Strength bottle.
Burrow Strength to go.
The BS Reunion Rye. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Straight from the back.
Straight from the
We
back.
get exclusive.
We getting exclusive. Say it again, bro. We getting exclusive. Straight from the back.
Blunts and bourbon.
Blunts and bourbon.
We out here.
We out here.
We puffin' Cohiba, sippin' on fine bourbon. I don't play for the leader. I'm a grinder, get to working while you moving like a tortoise. I'm more like fast forward. You think it is funny? I get straight to the money while I'm puffin' a Cohiba, sippin' on fine bourbon. Holla at some mamacitas, girl, that outfit fitting perfect, and I got what you deserving. I see it in your eyes.